Seemed like on television when they blow up these buildings, seemed like it was going all the way around like a belt. All these explosions. Somewhere around the middle of the World Trade Center, there was this orange and red flash coming out. Initially just one flash. Then this flash just kept popping all the way around the building, and the building had started to explode. Well, here's the South Tower on the right, a known controlled demolition on the left. Is there any similarity in the first few seconds? Because something else happens that we'll look at right after this. I thought the terrorists planted explosives somewhere in the building. That's how loud it was, a crackling explosive.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the
planted probably?
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion.
I heard a second explosion and another rumble.
An hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower.
It just went ba-boom, it was like a bomb went off. And another explosion came right from it, just everyone flying.
There were numerous secondary explosions taking place in that building. There were continuous explosions.
No, the first explosion, and there was a second explosion in the same building. There were two explosions.
Okay. Federal agencies that were down there do believe that there was some sort of explosive device somewhere else besides the planes hitting.
There was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. So obviously, according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
There was a secondary explosion, probably a device either planted before or on the aircraft that did not explode until an hour later.
Then there was some secondary explosions and then the subsequent collapses.
That the FBI most likely thinks that there was a car or truck packed with explosives underneath the buildings, which also exploded at the same time and brought both of them down.
Now that's the first time we're hearing that. So two planes and explosives that were in the building, is that correct?
That is the working theory at this point. That is
a huge explosion now raining debris on all of us.
It sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, three big explosions.
About 50 consecutive bangs, and it fell down like a waterfall.
And we heard the noise associated with an implosion.
We heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us.
We heard a loud explosion, and at that point, Building 2 was collapsing.
At that point, we heard a large boom. You know, I looked up and just saw the building coming at us.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
There was another major explosion. The building itself, literally the top of it, came down.
All of a sudden, you hear explosion, and you could see the building starting to collapse.
Huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
We understand now there has been a secondary explosion on Tower 2.
According to the Associated Press, another building that has either been attacked or exploded.
The tower, rather, that has collapsed, though, we are told, collapsed because of a third explosion.
And about an hour later after that, there was a huge explosion at the base of the South Tower. That's One World Trade Center, and part of the building collapsed.
We could hear a rumble, which was about 5 seconds long, preceding the actual collapse, and then a boom when each of those towers collapsed.
Just seconds ago, there was a huge explosion, and it appears right now the second World Trade Tower has just collapsed.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions.
And then you heard from far away, boom, boom. And you heard the boom, 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 boom.
Floor by floor, it started popping out. It was if they had detonated. If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
From the corner, boom, 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 boom. Just like 20 straight hits. And as the bombs were going, people just started running. And I sat there and watched a few of them explode, and it just started going pop. It just started going boom, 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 boom. And he goes, how fast? I go, like firecrackers.
Well, how many of these explosions do you imagine witnesses of explosions, documentation of explosions ended up in the final report of NIST? Why? What's going on here? NIST says couldn't have been a controlled demolition because they start from the bottom. Well, what do we have here? Whoops.
Top board.
top floor.
Well,
You can go
top-down
almost
controlled
anywhere in the
demolitions
structure,
happen also.
and given the right circumstances, you can release all of that stored energy, converting it into what is called kinetic energy. That's energy in motion, and that's what brings the building down.
So there's a top-down controlled demolition as an example. Speaking of which, this is NIST theory that the top part of this building drove the rest of the building down. Well, what we're going to do is look at the law of physics, Newton's third law. We're going to run a Mack truck into a Volkswagen. Who's going to win? You guys, you got this one, right? Equal and opposite destructive force. The bumper might be taken out by the Volkswagen, but the whole Volkswagen is going to be totaled by about that time, right? Does it matter if we drop the Volkswagen onto the Mack truck? No. The lighter part of a structure, which is composed of about 1 centimeter thick structural steel members versus very, very increasingly thick to solid steel at the bottom, this lighter part of the structure cannot possibly destroy the heavier, intact, cold, hard steel. Certainly not at free fall acceleration as if it weren't even there. And we'll see how fast this building actually came down in a minute. But I'm going to show you how it's coming down now. If we can turn these lights down. We don't have any movement here from here until about now. Another way to look at this, NIST tells us this upper part drove the rest of the building down, but it's destroying itself in the first 4 seconds. As you can see here. It's telescoping in on itself. Take a look. Just like Building 7 in the first 4 seconds. What's happening then? We'll start and stop. Just like the fireman said, belt of explosions wrapping all the way around the building. Start, stop. Fascinating. Does anybody see in any of the photos or videos a pile driver pushing the rest of the building down? It's not there. What do we see instead? More like a volcanic eruption like in the Tongan Sea in 2009, with upward, outward, arching streamers, laterally, freely flying objects with clouds trailing them, a geometry of fireworks, a symmetry evocative of explosions. What does it look like to you? Is that a collapse? Is this a collapse? Lights off. Underneath here, a violent series of, let's have all the lights off so you can really zoom in here with your watch in the lower right corner. Racing down the corner, almost as fast as the freely falling objects. Is that a collapse? The collapse is supposed to be up here somewhere. Something else is happening down, racing down this corner. What does it look like to you now? How about the South Tower? The South Tower begins to fall, and it's falling over. Well, it has at 22 degrees and falling off the building, so we have asymmetrical loading from that mass. We have asymmetrical damage from the fires up above, asymmetrical damage from the airplanes, and yet from below, what are we looking at here? Complete symmetry all the way down the building, just like the fireman described, like a belt all the way around the building equally. Can fire do that? Let's look underneath. 20 stories down below. What are we looking at here? Are you looking at a collapse or a series of hundreds of explosions just in this small quadrant?